As a kid, did you ever dream of becoming a professional race car driver, but maybe it was too expensive or always seemed out of reach? Here at Racing Prodigy, it is our mission to take those dreams and make them a reality. You too can be just like Jeff Gordon, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, some of the greatest drivers ever, and be a part of a world where real-life racing and motorsport opportunities are available to everyone. That world is now here. Here at Racing Prodigy, we provide real-world racing opportunities to those with grit and skill who may otherwise never be discovered. Thanks to esports competition, a new insight has been found. The skill set of virtual racing transfers to real race cars and tracks. Gamers and sim racers have proven that they can race real race cars against the professionals and win. It's now time for the world's first E2 Real Sports League, taking esports competitors to real-life racing competitions. Prodigy Racing League is here to offer aspiring real-world race car drivers the opportunity to compete across multiple gaming platforms to earn titles and coveted Prodigy passes. These golden tickets of motorsports allow you access to trips that are fully paid for you to train, learn, and even compete at Prodigy Week, our real-world racing academy held at Atlanta Motorsports Park in November. It is our goal and vision to draft the first class of racers from those who compete at Prodigy Week to fill the grid for our inaugural series to debut in 2024. We can only achieve our vision together, so join us today to test your skills, earn your spot at Prodigy Week, and enjoy the thrill of racing. Racing Prodigy, where dreams become a reality.
In just 37 days' time, we'll land up at the Atlanta Motorsports Park for Prodigy Week. Today starts the journey for one driver to make their way there, and they'll do it at this very track in rFactor 2 in the PRL Radical SR3 Cup. Hello everyone, welcome along to RaceSpot TV and onto the Racing Prodigy YouTube channel. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside by Joey Tebben. And Joey, so much excitement here. We continue to dive our way around the sim racing world, and it's not just the only places that these drivers have been able to fight. rFactor 2, of course, today. We were racing on Race Room just a couple of weeks ago.
Lots of simulators open, lots of ways to move through that E2 Real pipeline, but this might be one of the most relevant events we have, one of the most relevant tournaments we have all season, because this is the combination that the drivers are going to be tested at Prodigy Week. It's Radicals, it's the Atlanta Motorsports Park. If you want to be good at racing this in the real world, if you want to learn your craft there, well, you can start doing exactly the same thing in the sim today and fighting for one of those Prodigy passes.
We break out the Radical SR3, 230 odd horsepower, 600 kilograms, so it's pretty light. The interesting thing is the SR1 that they'll be going racing in, slightly lower powered, but also slightly lower in weight. Going to be interesting to see how they get on. Let's take a look at the format though. As ever, it is an open time attack qualifier. Anyone can jump onto racingprodigy.com to register for the time attack qualifiers. We only take the top 40 to today's semi-final, 2 races, top 10 from each go racing tomorrow in the final, fighting for not just the Prodigy Pass, Joey, but for the physical prizes as well.
It's always a very exciting format because it means that that last spot in the top 10 is basically the most important spot in every single race. Obviously, you want to win in your semifinal. You want to be up front once the final rolls around. It's tended to be those drivers who have won in the finals in the past. But just advancing to the final is great for your confidence. It's great for maybe showing yourself off with the Prodigy draft in a couple of weeks' time. Even if you don't win in the finals, you may get a chance by being selected by the Prodigy Search Committee. It's not going to get you any prizes, but it may get you a spot in Prodigy Week.
Absolutely. Top 500 in every single one of the time attack qualifiers are eligible for the Prodigy Search selection. We have the second of those committees convening this coming Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed to the Racing Prodigy YouTube channel where you can catch all of the action. So that's the format. That's what we've got in store for you. The drivers are heading out there very shortly for the qualifying session. This is going to be somewhat of a difficult qualifying session, I feel, because it's a track, Joey, that maybe not a lot of the drivers have experience at, and it's a really demanding technical track as well.
It's a very new track as well. It only opened about 10 years ago now. Designed by a very familiar name, Herman Tilke. We know him from F1 tracks around the world, Grade 1 style tracks with tons of runoff, suited for large high-speed cars, but this was sort of a passion project for Herman Tilke. He was basically given free reign here in the wilderness of Dawsonville, Georgia, to build whatever the heck you want, make an awesome racetrack, and he did exactly that with no thought about making F1 race well there. He just wanted to make a fun track for anybody.
It's about an hour's north of downtown Atlanta in the Blue Ridge Mountains. 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers with about 100 feet of elevation change. It's about 35, 40 feet wide. So it is going to be a place where you can make passes happen, but it's definitely going to be rewarding bravery, both here in the virtual world, but also in the real world when we land up for Prodigy Week. There are some corners modeled after Spa, the Nürburgring. It's going to be a really interesting challenge for them to go racing at for both races. There is not just, of course, the Prodigy Pass on the line. There are the sponsors as well. We have to thank those that make this possible, starting with Asetek SimSport. They, of course, provide the Invicta Quick Release Adapter to maximize wheel options available on all wheelbases, featuring integrated power and data, hassle-free connectivity for you between your wheel and wheelbase. We'd also like to thank SimLab and Grid Engineering. Right now, you can order their exceptional products for sim racers seeking the utmost quality. SimLab's P1X Sim Racing Copware has become the gold standard in the industry, and Grid by SimLab has a premium lineup of official Porsche licensed products available. The Porsche 911 RSR Sim Racing steering wheel, as well as the 911 GT3 Cup dashboard display unit, are available for ordering today. Joey, what are your expectations? We have some returning drivers into the Prodigy Racing League, and we've also got some drivers joining us for the very first time.
And we've got a mix of experience levels. We've got some drivers who have been sim racing for over a decade, some 20 years at most, and we have some drivers who just decided to make their way into sim racing over the past year, or even in the past couple of months, knowing that this Prodigy Racing League was coming around. But everybody is going to be inexperienced at this track. It's not the most popular track in terms of racing events. I'm sure there will be drivers who have driven around here before, but they're learning right as the qualifying session goes along. Every single lap, you learn something new about this track, and every single lap, you're going to be learning where you're going to be able to make moves at a very, very fast and flowing and difficult to pass racetrack.
There is drivers that have plenty of experience in rFactor. We've got other drivers with less experience. Going to be interesting to see how they all adapt to the challenge. Currently, the quickest of the drivers that has entered into our semi-finals, Julian Klaffenbach at the top of the qualifying standings with a 1:13.117. It's then a 10th and a half back to second spot, and to Jan van der Heide in the number 22. Colin Spork in the number 99 currently sits in the third position. Margins looking a little bit bigger, Joey, than I think we've become accustomed to.
Yeah, Klaffenbach has really pulled a solid gap. It's only a 10th and a half, but in the context of this series in the past couple of tournaments, that's almost been the distance that's separated the entire top 20 at times. But right now, the driver who's only 14 years old, you see him on the camera there, he's been racing for a couple of years now. He is dominating at the moment, just completely in control on pole.
We know in sim racing that age is just a number, and sometimes there's cooler heads that sometimes prevail when we go out racing than sometimes the age would sometimes suggest. These drivers only really getting one real attempt at a qualifying lap. That's why we're seeing some of the bigger margins. The drivers trying to set banker laps, if you will. Maggio's just jumped up into 4th. Only a handful of drivers still left out on the track. Reed, Pastor, and Andre included. Running out of the undulating Atlanta Motorsports Park comes Jeffrey Lund in that number 39. Don't believe this is going to see him on an improvement, but Joey, we mentioned it earlier, this is the combination. Yes, slightly different car in terms of the power and weight, but the combination they'll be racing if they win that Prodigy Pass and get their way to Prodigy Week.
Yeah, start getting the track baked into your mind, start remembering where everything goes, because it's going to make your life so much easier once you get out there in the real world and start doing those real laps with the eyes of everybody on you. Jeffrey's going to bring it down pit lane this time. His run is most likely over. Might be able to go out and do one more lap just for practice. There is time, but he's not going to improve. It's not going to count.
Again, just the one attempt that we're going to see from the drivers. Maggio's also out there and just out there for a signing session, practice a pit entry. That's not going to really mean much. It's Pastor and Andre that potentially might still be out there to set a time right now. 2 miles only. A relatively short track. They somehow managed to pack 16 turns into there, but that's more just because corner numbers, as ever, more of a suggestion in some places. Less than 2 minutes to go in this session, though. I think we're pretty assured in what we're going to see. When it comes, Joey, to the race itself, let's not forget that you got to make sure you're not just getting into the top 10. Advancing to the final tomorrow is, yes, important, but where you finish determines where you start tomorrow. The finishing position determines which row you start on. Whether you start on the inside or the outside, that is determined by who has the fastest lap across each of the semifinals.
Yes, the famous PRL zipper that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. I don't know still how much the drivers are really thinking about that during race time, but if you do get the chance to get a draft at one of the short straights on this track, if you do get the chance to maybe push a little bit harder at the end of the race, those little margins, those couple of 100 feet forward on the grid, those could be make or break. Maybe surviving a lap 1 accident, maybe just getting that little bit of extra track position. It doesn't seem like it matters that much to be 1 spot ahead in the same row, but it could matter and it could make all the difference.
And of course, tomorrow, that's when the prizes are on the line. A track like this, we might see slight breakaways happen if drivers towards the front choose not to battle with one another. You're going to have to make sure that you play this race slightly smart. You've got to have racecraft come into play. But that's one of the things that Prodigy Week is about. It's not just about the technical ability behind the wheel, but it's all about physical fitness, mental capacity as well, Joey. All these different things that make a racing driver be great.
Yeah, how many times do we talk about drivers who are fantastic in qualifying? They're great hot lappers. They can do all that. That's how you got here in the first place, doing a time attack, doing hot laps. But now the real test begins. It's about racecraft, and it's one of the most difficult places for racecraft. It's a tight, twisty track, turn 1, tight hairpin, then you go up the hill into a fast sweeper, almost like a carousel. It's got every flavor of corner. It's all narrow, and it's going to be a great test for the racecraft. Everybody's earned a spot in Prodigy Week who's won so far, but these drivers may be the most difficult ones to win a spot yet.
And the field seems like it's just getting stronger as well. People are seeing what we're doing, and with the opportunities increasing to get to Prodigy Week as well. Don't forget, racingprodigy.com. You can sign up and enter into the SK Racing Kart Tournament, available on all iOS devices right now. We've got an iRacing tournament coming up that's on the ovals. Time attack qualifiers begin next week, but you must be registered on racingprodigy.com before that gets underway. Do it now. It's harmless. Joey's going to make sure
I'm
he
downloading
does that.
SK Racing right now.
But Joey, I would suggest that ovals, Racing Prodigy, looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that one, and I wish I could participate in the SK Racing tournament, but I think that's a conflict of interest. We might have to end up having the government involved in that one. But I'm looking forward to the PRL iRacing Chevy Silverado Cup in a couple of weeks. It's the first time we're switching from the road side over to the oval side of sim racing. It's sort of an untapped market, but it's one of the biggest communities on iRacing. It's half and half, and we're going to see some new names there, and maybe see if some drivers who excel a little bit more on the oval side will also get a chance to excel in Prodigy Week.
And you say new names, but we'll see Garrett Lowe, who was a very strong competitor, was part of the first Prodigy selection show as well. He's competing for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Championship in a couple of days' time at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Looking forward to seeing him hopefully rejoin us for what is also going to be a multi-region affair. It's going to be a long day. I believe it's October the 8th, so join us here on RaceSpot TV on the Racing Prodigy YouTube channel. Joey, I'm getting tense right now. I'm feeling the nerves. Prodigy Week's closing, only 30 plus days away.
Yeah, it's not even a month away now. It's very, very close. I can smell it, I can taste it, and there's only a few more events to go. We almost have the full draft going. There's going to be a few more spots selected from the Prodigy draft, I believe, but then we'll have a full field. Everybody will be shipped down to Atlanta, whether it's Kane Halliburton from the last iRacing event, whether it's the first winner, or whether it's David Dalton Jr., whether it's Lawrence Beartons, whether it's Gustavo Ariel. Lots of strong drivers are ready to go.
Let's take a look at the grid. Jan van der Heide, Colin Spork will be on the front row. Starting behind them, a couple of other quick drivers. Ignacio Herrero and Darius Andre will share row 3, while Jacob Reed and Simon Demori line up on row number 4. Note the paint schemes. Every driver gets a unique paint scheme for them to represent themselves with. Brandon Hawking and David Lespez will share row 5, while Noble Setyawan and then Victor Gonzalez, 11th and 12th positions. They're the drivers that need to push on forward. So will the likes of Jeffrey London, Derek Dierkus with Fernek Pastor, and then Marcos Iglesias, 15th and 16th spot. The drivers that are going to have to work their way on forward, but we have seen that before. Mihail Plantic and Matthias Gase will round out the 18 cars as we now begin what is a rolling formation lap to get underway, Joey.
Literally a rolling formation lap and literally a roller coaster of a formation lap. You can see the elevation change just plunging down the hill, moving back up, even at pace speeds. You're still feeling like you're getting thrown around here through a washing machine, through a roller coaster, through something like that. There's high speeds around, up and down, and off camber, on camber. It's basically every single type of corner you can think of. You'll find it at Atlanta Motorsports Park. This is why this is the ultimate test, and this is why it's going to be very, very difficult to make a move once we get going, but you're going to have to get aggressive if you want to make an overtake at some of the few optimal overtaking zones on this track.
Again, 620 kilograms, 232 horsepower with a 6-speed sequential, no blipping required. It's all going to be just about bringing the momentum of the car around this natural road course. Pace car off and away. We're ready to go racing here. It's a sight of Prodigy Week. 37 days from today, one of these drivers may be racing in the real world. It's on the brakes, down the hill into turn number 1. It's a great start from Klaffenbach, who leads them through the opening quarter. Couple of cars off and into the grass. But now as we filter up towards the left, then the right flick, now onto the brakes for the second time of asking. Drivers getting very, very squirrely with the tires still coming up to temperature, but no one getting too physical within the top 10.
Still a couple moments of side-by-side coming down the hill here through turn 5, then through the second hairpin at turn 6 here, almost like the hairpin at Barber. That's going to be your second great overtaking opportunity, and you still see some fighting deeper in the field. It's going to be single file all the way up through the top 10 as they go down the back straight for the first time.
See now on that left side, no real separation happening. Big send down through the compression. Brandon Hawking sees it all in the rearview mirror. Reed and Demori, with now Lespez trying to go the long way around. Demori's going to be able to slide back on through. This is the cutoff. One driver slides on wide. It's going to be Reed that drops himself out of a top 10 cutoff spot.
Reed getting very aggressive on lap 1. You saw that dive through turn 11. Not always the most optimal overtaking spot, but he said, I see this move, I'm going to make it. Unfortunately, one mistake later is going to put him all the way at the back of the field. That's why you do have to temper that aggression a little bit. You want to make up spots on lap 1, but if you get that little bit too aggressive, Atlanta Motorsports Park does bite. There's not asphalt runoff like Herman Tilke's other tracks.
That is one of the things that makes this facility quite unique as well, in what is effectively a club facility for the most part, right? It's where people come and drive their cars that they own. There's no runoff, there's no room for error. You've got to be so precise. It's why it's become known as one of the most demanding and most renowned in North America, despite only opening now 10 years ago. This is a 25-minute race. It's going to fly on past. We're checking in with that battle pack just on the edge of the top 10. Let's not forget up towards the front though, Joey. They may not be fighting so hard right now. They will be fighting towards the end for grid position in tomorrow's final.
That turn 11 is so incredible. Every time we see it, it's your spine gets compressed. Your vertebrae are getting pressed together as you go down the hill. But you've got to commit. You've got to hold all that speed. And then you got one of the lowest corners, but Dierkes is going to turn around, set you on in turn 13. Both of them hard in the wall.
And that is a hellacious hit, and it just goes to show that that final sector modeled after Aragon can be so treacherous when you're trying to follow another car. Neither driver was inside of the top 10, but Race Control will surely take a look at that, because let's not forget, we do have live Race Control, Joey.
Live Race Control, they're always watching, and both of those drivers are out essentially, so Race Control's decision most likely won't make that much difference. But if you are in the top 10, we've seen that happen a couple of times over the past couple tournaments. A driver in the top 10 makes a collision and gets dumped out.
It's taken me a few minutes to notice this. We're missing a driver at the front of the field. Julian, maybe I'm just, it took me a while It took me a while to recognize it. Julian Klaffenbach's not leading us at the front. Only 18 cars are out there right now. Von der Heyde and Spork are breaking away as the top two.
And we were so distracted by all the drama on lap 1 that Julian Klaffenbach, the dominant pole sitter, is not here. He says he lost connection, unfortunately, and isn't going to be able to make it. That is heartbreaking for a driver who is absolutely dominant. Looked like he would be in total control of this race. But he's going to have to hope that he gets a second chance in the next couple of weeks, or maybe the Prodigy Search Committee sees his woes and sees that he was very fast. He was likely going to make this final and likely going to win this race. Maybe he deserves a little bit of sympathy, and we may give him a shot.
He will have the opportunity in that selection process to submit a video clip talking to why he feels like he should be chosen by the selection committee. That gets whittled down from all the video entries into the top 20 that our judges will then take a look at. We pair a sim racing, someone with sim racing insight with someone with real world motorsports insight. Last time we had Arava, 420 million views or something on YouTube, as well as Linus Lundqvist. Now, of course, an NTT IndyCar Series driver, who's going to be joining us on Thursday, September 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on Racing Prodigy's YouTube channel. Well, it's going to be a really interesting pairing. Another content creator, random call sign, is going to be joining former IndyCar, former F1, and former NASCAR driver Max Pappas.
Max Pappas does all that work with MPI steering wheels across many series. So if you get associated with him, if you get him on your side, that's a very reliable and a very good person to have in your book. But side by side here down the front straight, it's barely straight, it's barely even the front, it's in the middle of the track. But Reed and Pastor still making it work all the same. There's the dive from Reed into turn 1, but he's not going to be able to get it turned. Yes, he is ahead of Pastor. He got the grip in the middle of the corner. Looked like he was going to lose it, as Lund does behind him, or Geist rather.
That was a close one as well for Lund as well, so almost 3 cars going for a bit of a drama moment. But turn 1, the track falls away from you. It's definitely not easy, and these are cars where, even though they are light, if you unsettle the balance, it's very easy to find yourself spun around. Inside, by the way, of your top 10, they've all kind of settled into the rhythm. Gonzalez sits 1 second in front of Iglesias. It's not an easy track to pass at, and you're going to have to take advantage of mistakes in front of you, I feel, Joey, unless you're about 1.5 seconds quicker than those in front.
Yeah, luckily, there have been lots of those mistakes, though, so that's what's really been the critical thing here. That's why Gonzalez, who didn't start in the top 10s, made up a couple spots. He's up into the top 10 now, and this is going to be a very important pack because all these drivers, Demori, Hawken, Ignacio, even Andre and Maggio up front in 4th and 5th, they're all feeling the pressure of this pack. They're all racing with each other. They're all going to be sending moves. And when you start racing hard like that, at a track as tight as this, that's when the door opens to make mistakes. That's when the door opens, like right there, with Ignacio getting very oversteery. He's going to open the door for Demori to keep making up spots.
And so you can see the look of focus on the face as they're sweeping through the S's, trying to get their way on forward. Now through the left-hander, bring the momentum of the car naturally down the hill. Just continuing to run, not really taking too much advantage of all of that situation. You see the margin stretching out behind them as well. They'll be cognizant of the fact that they don't want to be fighting too hard with less than 7 minutes of this race done. Some of the tracks that we've been to before, Okayama comes to mind, where it produces great racing, don't get me wrong. but it's definitely not as difficult as this as Demori runs himself a little bit wide.
Again at turn 11, it's the most difficult corner on the track. It's going to be physically taxing when some of these guys take it on in the real world, but it's taxing enough here in the sim, just trying to keep it on the track, trying not to clip the grass, and then immediately having to get it slowed down for turn 12 right after. If you've got two wheels on the grass, that's not going to do too well for your coefficient of friction on those left tires, and that is an easy way to throw it off in turn 12, so these guys are all playing with fire.
Looks like a bit of pressure from Andre on Maggio. That's for 4th position. Gap's growing up to the top 2 as well. McGorgy is really starting to struggle alongside in through the S's. That's not necessarily what we'd expect. Somehow they'll make it work. A little bit of contact, and now sliding backwards through the field might be one of those machines. The bright orange car is really struggling to hold on, but now as they settle back into the heavier braking zone, an opportunity to get into line.
Maggio's doing a good job of recovering, but he's still stuck side by side with Brandon Hawk, and he's got to slot back in line and start getting comfortable, because this is the most difficult place to run side by side, and he does slot back in line coming into turn 10. We were almost going to be hearing Simon and Garfunkel there. Where have you gone, Alessandro Maggio? But no, he's still in line. He's still good. He lives to fight another day, and he's still in the top 10.
You can just see the hands moving as well. This long left-hander that builds you onto that final straight. Maggio's not got a great run out of it, and here comes the pressure then from Demori. Right on the back bumper before you even get to the right flick onto the start-finish line. Covering the inside goes Maggio for a moment, but Demori switches back, lost to the late breakers, not really forcing it.
Oh, very late in the brakes though was Maggio. Gets it very slidey on the exit of turn 1. You're seeing levels of commitment we've never seen before coming into turn 1. You're even braking too late to be able to get it stopped, but they're side by side with Ignacio and Andre up the hill. They get that resolved, but they're still side by side. Who said you couldn't race at Atlanta Motorsports Park? Oh, there's some rallycross.
Cuts the track, but able to slither back on and hang on to it. Still on the inside. Hawkins now going to be shoved off wide. Maggio can't take advantage and scramble on through. Hawkins, in fact, going to try and look alongside the 56 once again. I love that you see the elevation change with the cameras. When the track gets blocked, when the cars fall away from us, it just goes to show, like you say, the physical nature of this track, but also how it changes, where the drivers are braking, where their references are, and all the different ways that they're having to adapt. Once again, a little bit of a slide there from Andre. Hawkins starting to break away.
It's just a ton of elevation change. I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like 50 feet, I think, coming down into turn 11 there. Think about your house. That's about 50 feet. If you fell off your house, that's what it's like driving through turn 11.
Once again to the inside of turn number 1, this time with a bit more assertiveness. Demori's going to get the elbows out and force Maggio 2 wheels into the grass. And as we cycle up into turn number 2, still alongside, Maggio's not having none of it, returns the favor, grabs 7th back.
It's fantastic to see, and this is the kind of thing we want to see. We want to see racecraft. We want to see a little bit of aggression. We don't necessarily want to see drivers leaning on each other, but we do want to see the racecraft. We want to see the moves being made. We want to see the hungriest drivers who really know that every spot matters, especially at this track where it's so difficult to pass. Even if it is just for 5th and 6th, that's 1 extra row up the grid, and there's almost a time for Maggio into a place where he can very much not do that.
These drivers are really going at it. It's not going to help their lap times, that's for sure. And again, remember, the lap time is what determines which side of your row you start on. If you finish in 7th position, you're starting on row 7. Question is, are you 13th or 14th spot? Jacob Reed, remarkably, still has a chance to crack his way up into the top 10. Let's not forget, after slipping off in the opening laps, almost halfway through this race is only a couple of car lengths away from a spot in tomorrow's finals.
Well, he very much should be up here. He was up here in the top 10, and he sees Victor Gonzalez up ahead and says, you know what, Victor? You've got a little bit lucky in the first 12 minutes of this race. I hope you're happy, but I'm going to take your top 10 spot away from you. He's looking to the inside, looking to the outside. He's got the run, but it's not possible to do anything through there. He's going to have to slot back in line, but he sees Gonzalez and Lespes up ahead of him. He knows both of them are slower than him. He can afford to be a little bit patient here. He's got 13 minutes to go and wait for a smart place to actually make this move.
I wonder if part of the reason why you do get so much actual fighting here is such a wide track, Joey. 35, 40 feet wide through most of it. It produces a couple of different lines that can be taken. It also produces those chances for even cars like this, which yes I know are relatively small, to run 2 and 3 abreast.
Yeah, it was built as a club track, but it is absolutely still a racing circuit. Jacob Reed gets a little bit out of shape coming over the top of the hill there, and that's a good illustration because you go from the inside in turn 11 to somehow being still on the inside in turn 12, then you're on the outside through turn 13, and all the way down the front straight, you're on the outside coming into turn 1. And Reed got it a little bit wrong there in that rhythm section, loses a ton of momentum. He's going to be hoping for Gonzalez and Lespes to run side by side through turn 1. They're going to do exactly that with Gonzalez on the outside.
Gonna potentially allow Jacob Reed to come on through. More contact for Gonzalez. And a sim racing veteran has been doing this for more than a decade, now finds himself having to do the hard work again and find a way back into the top 10. It's all as we've hit the halfway mark of this race. And Jan van der Heide is 3 seconds clear of Colin Spork at the front. Let's not forget what we saw last time on Race Room, Joey. The dominance in each of the semi-finals, Michael Romanidis and Marko Pejic, it carried forward to the final. Marko Pejic dominated all 30 minutes in that final race.
It tends to be how things go in these tournaments. We have the 2 semifinals, we have the 2 titans that kind of meet each other, but there goes Jacob Reed around the outside of Lespes. Incredible move there in turn 11. Just distracted us from the mastery that's up front. There's some mastery going on at the end of the top 10.
It's important as well for Jacob Reed because it's not far now to close to Maggio, Demori, and maybe even Andre. These are all extra positions in tomorrow's final that he's not going to have to pass. Gonzalez has got a great run out of that final corner and now rising towards the line. Already defensive is Lespes, covering the inside, the 51. Forces the long way around Gonzalez, who very much overcommits, has to put some opposite lock into it, but drifts the car into the top 10.
Who knew a Radical was a JDM car? Who knew they could drift so effectively? But that was fantastic from Victor Gonzalez, and that was on one of the most experienced drivers in the field. Pablo Lespes says he's been sim racing since he was 5 years old. I don't even know how that's possible. I don't know how you have the fine motor skills to do that. He said his computer only had 4 colors back then, but he's been doing this for longer than I've been alive, and longer than you've been alive too, Arjuna.
Yes, he is 41 years old. He has got plenty of sim racing experience. Like I said, Gonzalez had a decade of sim racing experience in his wheelhouse. Yes,
multiply that by 3.
Exactly, more than 30 years, and this is where we can talk about titles like Grand Prix Legends and going back even further than that to, I'm sure, when it was even more simple. 10 minutes remaining in this race, though. Seeing call-outs of just how dominant a performance we're seeing from Jan van der Heide at the front. Just mention as well, we are seeing Colin Spork in the Alpine Esports colors running in second spot. Going to be interesting to see how he does. But those are some of the familiar rFactor 2 names. I think, Joey, the name that stands out to me, Brandon Hawkins up there in 4th. He's someone that I'm more used to seeing on iRacing.
Yeah, very experienced driver on iRacing. I feel like I tend to see him more on the stock car side and the NASCAR side in those leagues, but doing a great job here. As look at Jacob Reed, the Intimidator, we're going to start calling him, just gets Maggio into a slide and says, thank you very much. I'll be back in P8, which I think is where he is before he went off the track in the first place.
Still has the opportunity, like I said, to close up to Demori. He's going to take some aggressive laps right on board with Maggio now, and you'll just see the way that this track requires you to maximize every little bit. A little bit of understeer for Jacob Reed as they now plunge down the hills, going to drop him back slightly. You are seeing plenty of opposite lock from these drivers. That's just one of the things that you adapt to from sim to sim. Brandon Hawkins, someone that we've seen on other platforms as well be successful. What's happened to Andre? Seemed to run wide through the final sector, and now a spot at the top 10 granted to Lespes.
I don't even know where Andre ended up there. We cut to his onboard, and it seemed like he ended up in the golf course down the road, so that must have been a phenomenal off for him through turn 13. And that advances one more driver up into the top 10. They're starting to fall like flies. That's 3 drivers already who have gotten into heavy contact.
Not an easy combination, that is for sure. They have a bit more power than they will be running when they head out there in Prodigy Week in SR1. That's 500 odd kilos, just under 190 horsepower. This 620 kilos, 230 plus horsepower. 9 seconds of lap time difference when they go racing at Silverstone, if you're curious. Battle on for third. Brandon Hawking in the white and orange trying to look around the outside of McGorgy, and now switches back down the hill through the compression. The Canadian slides through the grass, takes a little bit too much risk, but stays out of the wall crucially. Will stay in front of Ignacio, but you can tell what Hawking's trying to do, what it means to get up to third.
Well, it's hard to pass the number 27. He's proven himself to be very, very defensive. He's proven himself to be the real McGoy. But Brandon Hawking trying to use all of that oval racing experience to carry that momentum. He had to fall on some different oval racing experience to get that thing under control in the grass, though. Phenomenal job to get things slowed down before turn 12 came along, because it's very easy to just flail around in the grass there for a while. He could have lost much more with that very high speed off.
Maximum commitment, that's for sure. Now, the misfortune of Andre has not just given David Lespez a chance to be in the top 10, but for those behind to maybe close. Jeffrey Lund, who's been in every single one, apparently, of our Prodigy Racing League tournaments so far, including, I think, the Street Kart tournament, based on a comment in the chat. Continues to run, but in 12th position right now, needs to get in front of Pastor and then close the margin to Lespez, but time is starting to wind down. Pastor goes a little bit deep.
There's the switchback from Jeffrey. Pastor still drifting it there, and Jeffrey Lund up into P11. He might be a little bit quicker than Lespez up ahead as well. There's 2 seconds between them, 6 minutes to go. That's about 4 or 5 laps by my calculations. We cannot count out Jeffrey Lund from advancing into the top 10, and Pastor's almost inventing his own track there through turn 11.
That dive down the hill is just such a difficult complex. Another driver finds himself in trouble. Now Maggio's found himself dropping down the order. Lund finds himself in the top 10, and now will be defending for all his worth with 6 minutes to go and rising their way up towards the start-finish line once more. Von der Heyde leads by 5 seconds from Sport. McGorgy is then a further 7 seconds back. There's the look of disappointment, frustration on Maggio's face.
Now, where have you gone, Maggio? Our nation turns its lonely eyes to you, woo, 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 and he is very, very sad. Was having a great performance, was solidly in the top 10, made some of the most spectacular passes, but he's going to be another one of those drivers who's going to be hoping to fall back on the Prodigy draft, on the Prodigy selection committee, to maybe get himself a spot, or come back in iRacing.
What's happened to Victor Gonzalez, who's now dropped to 11th and in fact continues to drop back. Pastor's found his way into a final spot. It's chopping and changing like a hot potato right now, and Brandon Hawking's all over the back of McGorgy in through the final sector, and with traffic set you on just in front of them as well. Here's the look on board with the Movado driver as he rises his way up towards the line in the draft. Which way is he going to go? Switch to the inside? He's going to look for it.
Oh, he was given room there by McGoy. Very, very respectful stuff from the 2 drivers. And then under braking into turn 1, Hawkins going to try and make it work on the inside. They're still rubbing doors on exit. A slide from Hawkins, a slide from the 27. It's not over yet, though, but into the high-speed flick here of turn 3. McGoy's going to hang on. Hawkins got to back out of it.
Rolling through the carousel, almost a full 180-degree turnaround back down the hill. They will plunge. Timing on the left is updating, by the way, just to confirm. Victor Gonzalez seemingly out of this race and not in the top 10. It is a Pastor that currently is on the bubble and will be hoping to hold on with just a couple of laps still left to go. Hawkins still applies the pressure, and it's in through this final sector, modeled after Aragon, where he just seems to be that little bit better, seems to be that little bit quicker, and now trying to get the switchback, rolling through the long left-hander.
Yeah, they say it's modeled after Aragon, but I don't really believe them, because it's quite a bit more elevation changey, and it's quite a bit more exciting. Maybe it's like Aragon if it melted in the Spanish sun. Maybe that's what they were going for.
Oh, that doesn't sound too bad, but Brandon Hawking in the grass. He doesn't look, I think, too thrilled about that. Was a little bit scared for a moment, backs out of it. And you can see that who's joined the fun right behind them? Well, say hello to Ignacio Herrera.
Welcome to the party. He wasn't up here for the longest time. He was kind of in a group of his own, was just having a hot lap session at Atlanta Motorsports Park, as we see so often here, but now he's in the battle. He's trying to show off his racing ability. He's seeing Hawken and McGoy throw everything at the track. He's thinking maybe both of them are going to throw it off the road in front of me. So I'm going to stay a little bit cool back here, watch them make mistakes, watch them do all these lockups and slides, and he could very well be on the podium here in 2 minutes' time.
Just listening in. Off throttle, letting the car roll, and Brandon Hawking jinking to the inside. Turn 11's not really a passing opportunity, but I tell you what, he keeps thinking about it. He keeps going for it. It's up here where they start that plunge down the hill, where McGorgy seems to slide just that a little bit wide. Out back towards the line, they will scamper. I think we're coming up towards what should be 2 or 3 laps to go. It all depends on what Van der Heijden's doing up towards the front in what's been a very easy day for him. Once again, Hawking forced to the outside into turn 1.
Yeah, I don't think we're allowed to say any corner on this track isn't an overtaking opportunity anymore, because Brandon Hawken has tried it at every single one of them around this track. Unfortunately, the most ideal overtaking opportunity in turn 1 doesn't work out for him. He's going to try and throw it around the outside into these S's, but again, it doesn't work. It's always the ideal line for the leader coming through that little carousel of a sector. And once again, Hawken's going to have to wait for one of his weird overtaking opportunities to actually make it work.
Demore's now made it a 4-car Congo line, and I think what this really shows is tomorrow, if there are bottlenecks in the field, we are going to see drivers at the front be able to break away and maybe make the fight for a Prodigy pass be between just a handful of drivers. Today, it's just about the starting spots, and if anyone from semi-final 2 has been watching, you probably don't have to fight that hard. Just put in some decent lap times and you'll at least start on the inside of your row rather than on the outside, because it's all dependent on the fastest lap times for every single driver in the field. Once again to the line, should be 2 laps to go. Brandon Hawking's going to have another crack at getting up into 3rd spot.
He's going to be feeling deja vu, but he's going to peek to the inside in turn 1. He's not able to get there, though. McGoy blocks it off sort of accidentally with the way the racing line works. And Hawkins still trying to make it work around the outside, going for the switchback, but just finds radical rear end. Nothing he can do there. Ignacio's also too distracted with Demore behind him. They're fighting for 3rd. And there goes Lund around the outside of Lespez. Gets it very wide, though, and clips the grass.
Jeffrey Reed is, by the way, also not far away from that train for 3rd position. What a recovery drive that has been to be able to bring themselves back in towards a decent starting spot for tomorrow. Very, very slow. They will concertina up, and Brandon Hawkins alongside. Not going to be able to peek out, I would feel, as they once again head down through turn 10 in towards turn 11. Just look how compressed they all are. At some point, the cork's going to blow off in this battle. Front of the field, though, here comes Jan van der Heijden towards the line. 0 minutes remaining in this race, and it should be, I believe, 1 more lap to go. In fact, no, checkered flag flies. Semi-final 1 goes the way to Jan van der Heijden in a dominant race. Colin Spork 2nd, and in what was a very fun fight for 3rd, Brandon Hawking tried. Could not get in front, unfortunately, of Owen McGorgy in a photo finish at the checkered.
They almost got there. Needed a couple of extra inches to take that 3rd place away, but well done, Brandon Hawken, and well done to Fairneck Pastor. P10 hanging on. Had some luck with some drivers falling out, but it's not luck when the other drivers throw it off the road and you keep it on the road. He's going to get that final spot in the top 10. Very well driven by him, and very well driven by Van der Heijden. We didn't say his name once because he was so dominant out front, but he's a multi-time champion on rFactor. He competed in virtual Le Mans alongside F1 champions, so of course he's going to be successful here.
Colin Spork as well, Alpine Esports. That is the top level. There are plenty of these drivers who only downloaded rFactor 2 for the very first time for this event, Jeffrey Lund included. The drivers will complete their cool-down lap, and Joey, we'll cool ourselves off knowing that that's 1 25-minute race done. Still 1 more to go.
I don't know how we're going to be able to cool ourselves down, because with all that battling we saw in the midfield, Atlanta Motorsports Park has proven itself to be one of the most exciting racetracks we possibly could have taken this combination to. It is on the ragged edge every single time. You have to go 100% aggression if you want to make a move. I might need to take a trip down to the Coca-Cola Museum down the street and get a cool beverage to cool myself down before race 2.
It's a little bit further than down the street, unfortunately. You'll have to travel about 60 plus minutes, and that's
It's a long street. It's a long road.
If you're not in Atlanta rush hour traffic. Here's a look at the race results. Von der Heide, Spork, McGorgy, Hawking, Ignacio Herrera, Demore, Reed, Lespez, Lund, and Pastor. Those are the drivers that advance to tomorrow, all with a slightly different story to tell in semi-final one ultimately. And I think a lot of them will be starting on the outside of their rows tomorrow, depending on how we get the sort of racing in semi-final 2. That might not be as frenetic as what we saw here today. So 10 drivers advance. Unfortunately, it means the rest of the drivers we will not get to see. They will still be considered for the Prodigy Search selection. Let's not forget, they still have a chance to win a Prodigy Pass. But for Marcos Iglesias, for Michael Plantic, for Matthias Geist, Derek Dirkis, Norval, Setyuan, Victor Gonzalez, Alessandro Maggio, Darius Andre, as well as Julian Klaffenbach, their journey in the PRL rFactor 2 Radical SR3 Cup comes to an end. Brief little cool-down period for us. As mentioned, we can catch our breaths. Hopefully, we can get a word with Jan von der Heide as well and understand what this track is all about, because my first time actually calling a race here, Joey. I've seen some onboards of, various club tracks, GT3 RSs in the past. It's a wild, wild ride.
It is wild. I mentioned that it's 98 feet of elevation change in total. That is 10 stories that you're falling down basically half the time. It's something you don't experience outside of a roller coaster. It's something you don't experience out of a terrible accident, but somehow you've got to control that. It goes against the laws of physics, but all these drivers are going to make it work.
Again, let's just reiterate something that I feel like not a lot of the drivers got the memo on. Fastest race lap from today's semi-final helps set the grid for tomorrow. It's something we'll think about in semi-final 2. One driver that didn't really have to think too much about that, because they were pretty undisturbed up towards the front, was Jan von der Heide. Jan, tell us a little bit more about this Atlanta Motorsports Park. 37 days from today, the Prodigy Pass winner is going to be driving around this track. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely is, but also quite challenging, especially like the transition between qualifying and race, like how you have to nurse the tires in the sim to keep consistent lap time. So quite challenging as well. But yeah, really enjoyed it.
Talk to us about your race. It seems pretty uneventful.
Well, first of all, obviously, super gutted for Julian. I put in a quite decent quali lap, and he absolutely smashed it. Looked like some technical issues, so obviously very gutted for him. Would have loved to fight it out on track. Yeah, as I mentioned, like managing the tires was the main objective. Extremely tough, so I just wanted to defend turn 1. Try to build a bit of a gap, and then just try to keep the tires in the window, which was quite challenging. And especially tomorrow with 5 minutes more race time, it will be even more of a challenge. But yeah, looking forward to it.
You preempted my question. I was going to ask about the 5 extra minutes with the tires. So let's talk about the challenge of racing with other cars, because we saw some very fun racing, but it was all behind you. What do you think it might be like towards the front, knowing that you can lose a lot of time fighting side by side here? And so maybe the fighting might be reserved for the last couple of minutes of the race.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I think the draft is quite powerful once you're inside a 3 or 4 tenths window. So yeah, I guess I will find out tomorrow. Obviously today I had a clear track in front of me for the majority of the race. So yeah, I probably can tell you more about that tomorrow, I guess.
Well, take the, next couple of hours to relax. We'll see you tomorrow again to go racing. Congratulations, Jan, a dominant performance in semi-final number 1.
Thanks a lot, guys. Looking forward to it.
So that was a chat with the top step of the podium. I think we're going to get the chance to chat as well with maybe Colin Spork or Owen McGorgy in a few moments' time. But Joey, it was really interesting to hear. Tire management. I mean, at a track like that with so much demand on the rears, I mean, it should be expected, but it's going to be something to think about tomorrow, that's for sure.
It is. It's going to be a hot track. It's going to be a very slick track, and you need to keep the tires under you with such fast corners, or else you're going to be off the road like we saw so many drivers earlier today.
Yeah, unfortunately, if I was out there on track, I'd probably be in a pretty similar situation. The Alpine Esports driver of Colin Spork ran in second and somewhat comfortably. Colin, delighted to see you joining us for the Prodigy Racing League. Talk to us about this challenge at the Atlanta Motorsports Park and how you ran in second.
Yeah, hey guys, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It was an interesting race. Of course, we didn't have anything to compare with because you're just driving on your own and you're hoping you'll find the limit of the car. But soon enough, after just one quali lap, taking a very chill lap just to make sure you're in the top of the grid. Well, top three. So that's what we aimed for. And from that point onwards, it was just about trying to create a gap to the guys behind. Not really looking in front, just trying to learn every lap you drive. Trying to create a gap to the guys behind so you don't get like any chaos from behind, dive bombed, whatever, damage. So it was just about just keeping the car on track, just driving your laps, still trying out some things during the race sometimes, because every moment, like I said, every lap you drive, every lap you complete, you learn something. I was looking at the sectors from Jan and trying to see where he was winning some time, and just during driving, I was trying to look at his car and see if I could see some minor behavior differences. So that's something we will look into tonight and then apply for the race tomorrow. But yeah, I think it was a pretty comfortable race, just doing my thing and not really looking at anybody else. After lap 1, I was like, all right, let me settle in and just drive my race.
I guess you say lack of comparison, but it's also a track that I'm guessing you may not have done too many laps at before.
Oh.
Give us some of your impressions on the Atlanta Motorsports Park.
Yeah, no, I've never driven it before. I didn't even knew of its existence before joining this competition. So going into the hot lap competition for you guys, I just went out. It was like, okay, all right, where do I go? Left, right, up, down, and then it was pretty nice to learn. It's a very flowy track, like with the long corners, some hard braking zones, and it's always a bit on angles, so uphill, downhill, etc. So it's very enjoyable to learn. And it's very challenging with this car because it's really tricky on the slip angles. If you slide slightly too much, you overheat the tires already. But if you don't slide it, you just going straight like a truck. So you need to really be on that edge. And I think the track has been really fun, especially just driving on your own, not having any comparison, just doing laps. I think it has been one of the most fun track and car combinations to do that, because normally you get sick of the track and you're like, okay, after this race I don't want to see it again. But well, of course you hope to see it again, but in a different version. But yeah, I think it has been it's a great choice by you guys.
That sounds like the esports answer there. Sometimes you get sick of tracks, but hopefully 37 days from today, you might be driving this track in the real world. Colin, congratulations on second. We'll see you tomorrow in the finals.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Always great to chat with the Alpine esports driver, Colin Spork. And Joey, qualifying for semi-final 2. It's underway right now. Got a bit of insight from the drivers, slip angle tires. I guess we're a bit more educated going into the second 25 minutes.
Yeah, and we shouldn't really be surprised by Colin. His name is Spork. Of course he's versatile in multiple types of racing. He serves multiple purposes.
You were waiting to break that one out, weren't you?
You can't help it. When the guy's name is Spork, you got to go for it.
Well, if you're wondering what all of this is about, if you're joining us for the very first time, Prodigy Week is not far away. It's the pipeline for drivers that have not had opportunities to make their way into real world motorsports, to get their chance to shine. Let's see what it's all about.
What should you expect at Prodigy Week? Well, as a Prodigy Pass recipient, lots of seat time. We're going to put you on a skid pad, autocross course, kart track, on a sim using SimLab, Grid, and Asetek Sim Sports equipment. But most of your seat time will be in the Radical SR1 race car on the main track at Atlanta Motorsports Park. Now, you'll have a pro coach review onboard video and data. You'll work with PitFit Training, who trains IndyCar and NASCAR drivers. You'll work with Dr. Nick Molinaro, who helps pro athletes perform under pressure. You'll be interviewed, but don't worry, you'll get media training by DKC, and we're going to live stream it all on Racing Prodigy's YouTube channel with behind-the-scenes look into how it all goes down. We're going to open it all up, share setup information, data, and more, because we're here to provide access and opportunity.
We're into the final stages of qualifying. Once again, drivers get just that one attempt, and right now they are pushing. Dawid Marocek, the Burst Esports driver with a 1:13, currently sits on the pole position. Here comes Lorenz Herzing, purple in Sector 2, marginally off in Sector 1, searching to get into the 112s, and he does it and jumps to the front.
Very well done there by Herzing, putting another big margin on the field. You saw Julian Klaffenburg do that in the previous round, or in the previous race of today. Unfortunately, didn't get to participate in the race. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic. How does a driver of that level of dominance actually do once the race rolls around? Or will Marocek or Denahan or even Kalokshai be able to get up there and race with him once we go green in a couple of seconds' time?
Gurley jumps up into the top 5 as well. There's a second that splits the top 12 so far, and only waiting for Fletcher to set a time. The qualifying clock's going to come to a close, though. Jurne Simoncic is going to start from the back. That's a big shock. One of the strongest drivers you'd feel in the grid, brings so much rFactor 2 experience. His teammate Marocek will start in second, but Simoncic has got it all to do from 17th spot.
It's definitely not impossible to make it up into the top 10, though. You saw Jacob Reed in the previous race, in the previous semifinal of the night, was able to drive through there into the top 10 after a big mistake that put him at the back of the field. So Simoncic could be in good shape. Fletcher starting in 18th as well. Looks like he's not going to get a qualifying lap in at all.
Simoncic was able to get a lap in, it would seem. It's maybe the first lap just based on where the timing line was. There was a bit of peculiarities there. Top 10's a little bit more comfortable, but it goes to show. A race winner in so many major series, Jurne Simoncic. Here on rFactor 2, he's only starting in 9th position and 6/10 off of Lorenz Herzing. It's going to be a 69 car that runs to the line, and I don't believe there's any improvement. 13th position, the best that they will start. Another fascinating qualifying session in the books, Joey. And it now means that another big gap up towards the front. Will Lorenz Herzing be able to hold on and run away and dominate another semi-final like we've seen so many times before?
Can he keep it on the track? Van der Heijden had a 7-second gap at the end of the previous semi-final over Colin Spork. Will it be a similar gap from Herzing, or will it be a little bit more of a fight up front? Either way, if he is able to win, he's going to meet Van der Heijden tomorrow. So if he has an easy time today, it's going to get hard tomorrow. If it's hard today, that'll help him when it gets even harder tomorrow as well.
Let's not forget rolling start, so there's no dropping the clutch and trying to slip away from the line in the most optimal of fashions. It's just time things up and go when you can. Let's not forget as well that turn number 1, we got through safely in that first semi-final. Much, I think, to the disappointment and surprise of many.
Yeah, much to the disappointment of some of those drivers at the back of the field who were looking forward to making some spots from that chaos, but the chaos came later. There's going to be some of that. There's going to be drivers off the road. There's going to be rewards for the consistent and safe drivers, but they've got to do exactly that.
Here we go. Lorenz Herzing, Dawid Marocek on the front row, Jake Denahan and David Kalokshai on the second row, Martin Merguli and then Zoltan Vrkonai on the third row, with Fadli Rahmat and then Stan Vleistra on the fourth row. We have a truly international flair today. I think almost 19 countries represented in the field of almost 40 drivers. Jurne Simoncic, Pablo Aylin on the fifth row, Steen Handgraf and then Johan Kurjon on 11th and 12th positions. And then 13th, hopefully not unlucky 13th, with the already cover over the car for Denny Ikbek and then Tomic back alongside. Andrea Dalla Valle and then Kamto Chukwera in the final couple of rows alongside with Nicholas Legros and Sergio Fletcher. It's another 18 that begin their roll around the 2-mile facility here. Feeling tense once again, Joey. How are you feeling?
I don't know. I need another massage after that last race. I still haven't recovered from the roller coaster of emotions we felt that whole time, but I'm very excited to see that again. I'm very excited to see what these drivers get up to at Atlanta Motorsports Park. They fought so hard in the middle of the field in the previous semifinal. We might just see that fight up front here. I can't wait to see how that ends up.
Still a couple of tournaments left in the Prodigy Racing League. Head over to racingprodigy.com to sign up for the PRL SK Racing TKM Continental Cup or the PRL iRacing Chevy Silverado Cup. Make sure you register before it closes. can't enter without a registration. These drivers know that they may be 25 minutes away from a final racing once again at the Atlanta Motorsports Park, and they'll be 3 wide into turn number 1. It's not for the lead. We're sailing clear goes the pole position sitter, but somehow safely through, we have navigated through the opening corner. Now flick left, then right, and onto the brakes for a long left-hand sweeping carousel of a corner where they've got single filed out Joey and are starting to get into the rhythms.
And Herzing says, thank you very much. I'm very glad you guys went 3 wide into turn 1 because that just lets him drive away. But you see deeper in the field, a little bit of contact coming through turn 12 there. These are all drivers right on that cut line. Simoncic, Ellen, Handgraf, and Karajan right in the edge of the top 10, just trying to fight for track position early, coming down the hill.
This is that complex where we saw Brandon Hawking trying basically in every single way to make a move happen. Not necessarily easy. We'll find out just how aggressive these drivers want to be. Simoncic tucked in behind. Leistra as they swoop their way out of that final left-hander, a long sequence that builds you up towards the line. It's already 1.3 seconds at the front, by the way, for Lorenz Herzing to lead up towards the line. Think we've had another technical issue, by the way, though, because only 17 cars are scored as rolling around the track. We'll get you updated just as soon as we can on what's going on, but sends down the inside into turn number 1.
Last couple of drivers in the top 10, remember Simoncic, we see him in the dark, in the middle of the night. He's got all the lights turned off. I don't know how effective that's going to be, but some drivers do choose to race in the dark. Maybe it lets them focus on their screen a little bit better. I don't know. We're in the middle of the day in Atlanta, so that throws things off.
Might be having some technical things going on, so drivers might... as one driver runs a little bit wide, that's Simoncic. Yeah, the Burst Esports driver typing away. Think we might need a re-rack and a stack before we can go once again. I should just hold with us here. We'll have a bit of a pause potentially before we're able to get gridded up for the racing. Joey, this is effectively right now a bit of a warm-up session for the drivers, but a different sort of a warm-up. The pressure of feeling like it's a race.
Well, this is the kind of thing that happens in the real world sometimes. Things go crazy, things go wrong, safety cars come out and you have to re-rack. All the drivers are going to have to kind of compartmentalize this and figure out what they're going to do in the future as we figure out how to go racing again.
There's a driver that jumped the start, and so we have had a little bit of a flag, if you will, to break out a football term, Joey, an American football term. We have a flag on the play where we haven't actually had the race start just yet, so we're going to need to have a bit of a reset. You're going to have a look at Joey and myself for a few moments, unfortunately. No. And then we'll get a look at the cars themselves. This is just some things that happens in real world motorsports as well. Joey, you and I enjoy a bit of NTT IndyCar Series racing, but I think it's fair to say they don't have the best track record for being able to start properly.
No, they don't. Don't even say those words, Laguna Seca, after a couple of weeks ago, but I was feeling like it was the other football. I feel like we're going to VAR right now. We're waiting for the review, and then we'll wait for the verdict, and we'll go back racing again. If I had 2 hands, I would have done exactly that, but I can do half the box. I can do the V.
Joey's being very careful about where his other hand goes to assure the allure of the green screen doesn't disappear. This, again, is oh, there you go. Was able to get it working. Mental reset for the drivers. It's difficult sometimes once you've sat down in a real or virtual car, got yourself ready to go, and then thought the race was underway. Let the adrenaline settle down, and then try and go again. Sometimes you feel quite depleted.
Well, it's a little bit of extra practice, actually. You saw the dive into turn 1 from Merguli. He's going to be thinking right now, how can I make that work even better? Can I get even better of a start? Maybe even make that 3-wide move into turn 1 work for the lead? But then the other 4 drivers who he tried to pass are going to be thinking, I should probably block off the inside in turn 1. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to do something different. And you do get that extra bit of practice that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, which could be very, very helpful.
I will just say, by the way, I'm not unfamiliar with a situation like this. I was doing an event in person where they had a lot of the people that was... there's a company that sponsors the event, right? And so they came in, they were doing a race on the rigs, and they wanted us to commentate on it. The problem was that they weren't able to stay in formation properly to navigate to where the racing was starting. And so we needed to restart about 5 times before we actually had the race start. and then it wasn't much of a race. It was just a lot of spinning. But this is not going to be a lot of spinning, hopefully, fingers crossed, especially given the expectations from that first semi-final. We have great shots behind us of the challenge that this track is, and a challenge, Joey, that in 37 days' time, these drivers aren't just going to be looking to focus their attention on. They'll be tested mentally, they'll be tested physically, they'll be tested about every single thing that makes a racing driver. And the best part about it, I've been learning a little bit more about Prodigy Week in the last couple of week or so, and they're going to be doing a docu-series about this. It's going to be fascinating to dive behind the scenes and see inside the journey for these drivers as well.
And just for the record, I feel pretty unsafe here. That's turn 2 and 3 behind me. That's a high-speed section. I feel like I'm about to get run down here in a couple of minutes. But I can't tell you how excited I am for Prodigy Week. I can't tell you how excited I am for the next 2 events, whether it's SK Racing or whether it's the next iRacing event. We're in Dawsonville, Georgia here at Atlanta Motorsports Park, a very famous place for fans of NASCAR racing. It's where Bill Elliott is from, awesome Bill from Dawsonville. So all those drivers who are looking for a spot in Prodigy Week from that PRL iRacing Chevy Silverado Cup, they're going to be coming to one of the ancestral homes of NASCAR.
Yep. It's a facility as well that's not necessarily that far away from Road Atlanta. 2 very different sort of facilities, though, and I think it's great that you got them, and then you've got the Speedway as well. There's lots of motorsports things to go and do around the city of Atlanta, that is for sure. And of course, the drivers are going to make sure they're focused on this specific track rather than getting ahead of themselves. Getting word it was Dawid Marocek that jumped the start in the first attempt at semi-final number 2. I believe, unfortunately, that means that we're not going to see him. And so that's a major driver, Burst Esports, major team, Jurne Simoncic's teammate, that we now miss from our re-rack.
That opens 1 spot up in the top 10. That opens almost a guaranteed spot in the top 10. But unfortunately, if you do come afoul of the rules, couldn't have him keep going. But he's going to be another driver who will look for a spot in Prodigy Week, maybe in one of the future events, maybe from the Prodigy Selection Committee. Never know what could happen.
Maybe I was a little bit misinformed. He might still actually be around and getting ready to go. So maybe we'll have the full complement of 18. That will be fun. We went 3 wide into turn number 1 on that initial start, didn't we?
We did. And they made it work somehow, against all odds. But it's somewhat easier to go 3 wide in a Radical than it is in an open wheel car and a Formula 4 car like we had in the previous tournament a couple of weeks ago. These things have sort of flat sides. They're rectangular, they're shaped. You can rub fenders, you can go side by side, you can get away with a little bit of contact that you couldn't get away with in a true open wheel car.
And this is the type of car as well that is meant to bring drivers along their journey, right? You start in karts, you maybe then go, your next step will be into something with 4 wheels. Maybe it's a Radical, something like this. And so that's why it's going to be such a fascinating test for the drivers. We're racing the SR3, slightly heavier, but a little bit more power to accommodate for that. We're talking about 500 kilograms and 190 horsepower for the SR1 that these drivers are going to be competing in. It's going to be really cool to see how they get on. Of course, if you're wondering who some of the other winners are, Gustavo Ariel won the very first Prodigy Pass in the Prodigy Racing League iRacing GR86 Cup. Lawrence Beertons won it on SK Racing's X30 Miami tournament. And then David Dalton Jr., the first recipient of a Prodigy Pass from the Search Committee, joins Marco Pajic, who won it on Race Room's Tortoise Formula 4 Cup just a couple of weeks ago. There's a couple more announcements to come, of course, as well. Search Committee is going to be convening on Thursday. We've got more search committees to come through the month of October. Still a busy time to come until we get racing, or I say racing, we get underway for Prodigy Week, Joey.
It's gonna be fantastic. We might not necessarily be racing just yet. That is a possibility potentially for the future, but it's going to be preparing drivers for racing. It's going to give them the whole gamut of preparation. It's not just going from a simulated car to going to a real car. It's a full-on pipeline, the E2 real pipeline, as they like to call it. You're getting trained up, fitness, press, everything, nutrition, everything you need to be a professional racing driver. You're going to get it all.
And again, I think that's the important thing, like you say, that there's a lot of goals that we want to try and achieve, and that's the plan for Racing Prodigy, to do it in a sustainable way, to build the pipeline for those that maybe didn't have or would not traditionally receive opportunities to try and go racing. The goal is, after our first Prodigy week, a second Prodigy week with even more winners, with the ultimate goal being the Prodigy draft, to bring together 50 racers, hopefully, that will be competing across both Prodigy weeks, to then select the drivers that would go racing for what would be an incredible goal of the Prodigy Racing League's Real World Series. That's the goal, let's not forget. And the best part is, it's not just about the drivers as well. I'll be there at Prodigy Week getting to follow the drivers as well, Joey. It's going to be really cool to see how some of them adapt from sim to real, having never maybe driven a real car in anger before.
Yeah, it's not really something we have a lot of study about. There's been many times in the past where there have been drivers who have gone from sim racing to real racing, some very successful, some less so, but you hear about the biggest names. You hear about William Byron, Ty Majeski, and many others who started on sim racing, were able to translate that to real racing. It's racing all the same. The word is the same, and it does translate.
Again, just a reminder, Max Pappas, Random Call Sign, they are the next two judges for the Prodigy Search Committee. Join us on Thursday, September 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for what's going to be another exciting moment. Seems like Dawid Marocek has not been reinstated to the grid, so it is 17 that I believe are rolling behind that pace car at what seems to be a not insignificant speed as well. They are definitely hustling through towards the final sector. What do you think the drivers are feeling right now, Joey? One false start, hoping to be able to push from now.
They're feeling a little bit like Livia Rodrigo. They're feeling deja vu, but they're ready to go again. They're ready to get that full throttle on, and here we go. Almost. Couple quarters time, we're feeling the pressure.
Remember, all Racing Prodigy action, including the Search Committee, can be caught exclusively live on Racing Prodigy's YouTube channel, so make sure you follow us there and stay subscribed for the journey that's still yet to come. Take two for semi-final 2 here in the Prodigy Racing League rFactor 2 Radical SR3 Cup. In towards the opening corner we'll go once again, and Lorenz Herzing will have a comfortable sight. This time not 3 wide behind, as Jake Dennehan's going to be fighting in through turn number 2, but it's on that climb up towards the next couple of corners where single file inside of the top 10 they will all get.
A little bit cleaner this time, no 3 wide. They're 2 wide a little bit further back as everybody tries to jockey for position on these opening laps. Just trying to find their place in the train before they can start pushing and getting aggressive again. You've got to fight with the track first before you can fight with other drivers, and on lap 1, they're all still doing a little bit of learning, trying to get into the rhythm.
Confirming as well, the clock's ticking down on the top left of your screen. We are racing green flag conditions right now. Second sector filing down the hill in towards turn number 10. A couple of drivers trying to now cover the inside. Don't want to run themselves out too wide, but there's been puffs of smoke and puffs of grass popping up through the field. Lorenz Herzing nice and tidily out of that final sector, though, is going to lead us back towards the line. Behind him, I believe, is going to be Jake Dennehan. Get the rest of the order up for you in just a few moments' time.
But it's very tidy up front. You're not going to see it this tidy for very long, because you look a little bit further back, last couple of spots in the top 10, the racing has already begun. The draft very effective on this front straight and into turn 1. Late on the brakes, Simoncic versus Kerjan. They're going to resolve things. Rackmat's going to hold on up front as well.
And to correct my correction of the correction, I think Dawid Marocek was able to get himself gridded up. He's running in third behind Jake Dennehan, but at least still in a transfer spot to tomorrow's final. That is the most important thing, so sorry about the confusion there. Marocek is indeed racing. We saw initially a 2-car breakaway in semi-final 1 before Von der Heyde applied the afterburners. We'll see if we're going to see something similar. But what we also saw was so much fighting around here, around the bubble. Simoncic, Kerjan 9th and 10th, having to fight with Pablo Ellen in 11th.
And Pablo Ellen experiencing turn 11 there for the first time. Might have to shame him a little bit for the vertical camera instead of the horizontal camera, but I think he wanted to show us that beautiful tree behind him. He wanted to show us the full height of that. Christmas is in 3 months, but he's bringing it to us already on the camera.
He's someone that's only been sim racing for going on a year and started here on rFactor 2 with the Le Mans Virtual Cup, which was a way that you could qualify your way to be a part of the Le Mans Virtual Series in a support category. with drivers who succeeded there getting a chance to compete in the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual down through turn number 1. Oh, Simoncic got a little bit sideways there for a moment, but nice and tidy there. The thing that surprised me, or stood out to me, with Pablo Ellen, who drives for the Virtual Drivers by TX3, he's taken his passion for racing into the sim racing world. He actually built his own car in the real world, which is an achievement in and of itself, and then went sim racing. Often, drivers will go karting and then find it too expensive. They won't often have built their own car, though.
Yeah, I don't even know if I could build my own PC, let alone build my own kart, so well done there, Pablo. But look at this, Dalla Valle and Sergio Fletcher side by side through the middle sector there. So difficult to do, it never stops being amazing. But Sergio Fletcher, who started dead last year, 18th, is already making spots forward up into P15, and he's not done. You can see he's much faster in race conditions than he was in qualifying, where he didn't even get a lap in.
Andrea Dalla Valle, someone that started on rFactor 2, but we've seen compete across the different platforms in the last couple of years in various events. Also competed last year in the ADAC Sim Racing Expo, something that he'll be doing again in a couple of weeks' time. That's an in-person event, a very different sort of an atmosphere. He's not really fighting where he'd like to be right now on his return to the platform where things began for him. Yes, 16th spot, but crucially about 3.5-4 seconds off of 10th position. We saw how much time you lose when you're fighting, and Dalla Valle is going to have to work his way on forward one spot at a time.
You can see the wrestling with the wheel between the two drivers, both driving with very similar setups, it looks like, but just absolutely throwing that wheel around through the middle sector is the driver on top there. So you're seeing the driving styles very different from a lot of these drivers, but it all adds up to being pretty close on pace no matter how you drive this place. See Kerjan here, P10 on the cut line, ultimate pressure. He's done a good job of just hanging on, but you can never be safe here. You can never be content. You can never be complacent. You've got to keep pushing. You've got to look at those drivers up ahead and look to move your way further forward, because you've got some hunters behind you.
On board in that fight, rising up towards the line, 20 minutes to run, and compared to some of the other competitions where it was where we've seen different sort of rules about when we finish, let's not forget that we finish on the lap where the timer runs down towards 0. Here's what is proving to be the choo-choo train for 7th. Fleistra holding off Rackmat, at least for now. The Indonesian not able to get on through. Jurne Simoncic feeling the pressure from behind, I must say, because Kerjan's all over the gearbox.
And you mentioned 19 countries in 40 drivers. Unfortunately, it looks like we're missing a couple of them. Adrian Nell was supposed to be representing Namibia today, which would have been fantastic. It's not necessarily a part of the world we hear from often in sim racing, but we're hearing from Indonesia. We're hearing from basically every country in Europe that we have to offer here. It's great to see the internationality, and I hope everybody's got their passports ready, because they're going to have to make it to America soon.
Yeah, Indonesia's got a pretty good and bumping sim racing scene. Setyuan, who we saw in semi-final 1, was also a part of the Indonesian sim racing community. And for those that are familiar with some of the teams, HM Engineering, major sim racing team from the region, he was part of them. Not anymore. Up the inside, Rackmat's under fire now from Simoncic. The Burst Esports driver leans on the Indonesian, opens the door for Kerjan to get on through as well. And suddenly Rackmat goes from being comfortably in 8th and sitting without any pressure on the bubble, now in 10th and right in the danger zone.
Yeah, it's Pablo Ellen in the all-orange radical behind this train, and he is seeing these battles. He's seeing Simoncic throw it off into the grass, and he's looking at these mistakes, hoping for the top 10.
Jake Denahan's dropped down to 5th position, it would appear. Not sure if has been an issue for him running off the road, or if there's a technical issue. We'll get an update for you just as soon as we can, but I think what we have sort of seen so far, Joey, is a race that hasn't seen as much fighting as what we were accustomed to in semi-final 1, but maybe it's all just starting to build.
Yeah, I can feel it's about to be coming. We haven't seen the incidents we saw in the previous race. We saw a crash on lap 1 in the semifinal number 1, which already kind of set the tone for things that were to come, but we've had a remarkably clean start so far. We're starting to see the loose moments. We're starting to see the oversteer. We're starting to see the mistakes. and I think we're going to see a lot more of them in the final 17 minutes of this race as the pressure really does start to build. Now Rackmat's the driver who's feeling all of that pressure, and there's even more pressure in the top 5 for the podium.
So Denahan still runs, but now has dropped to 5th, slides the car out of turn 3 actually as well, before they rise through the left-hander of the carousel. Lorenz Herzing, 4 seconds clear at the front. Marocek, Marguli, Kolochai, and Denahan, and Valconi as well, all in that second peloton trying to chase down a driver that I feel like is here for redemption. Lorenz Herzing, a name that for some slightly infamous. Daniel Apps got in some trouble for sim racing a couple of years ago. Lorenz Herzing was part of that, but someone that has always been quick on rFactor 2. Took his time away from sim racing to pursue other passions, flight school. He's going to become a pilot. He's got some time to dive back into the sim though, and so before he can go and start his full course, he's going to make sure he gives it his all in sim racing to get one final chance to go racing in the real world.
I was hoping he'd finished his course already and he could have flown himself to Atlanta.
Oh, that's not bad. Imagine now if we... that's the next part. We need to create the racing drivers that can fly the teams and their cars between each races.
Well, that's what Roman Grosjean does in the real world now. I think Alexander Rossi's able to fly as well, so... I mean, I have to look at the most similar driver name-wise in the field. Maybe Kerjan could be the pilot for the rest of the field. Go give Roman a call.
Yeah, Roman has actually gone and he's really taken a fancy to it. Has gotten not just his VFR credentials, IFR, multi-engine, commercial pilot license now as well, from what I gather. So yeah, they're not a bad idea. Well, we'll see how it all goes. We are 10 minutes done in this race. Lorenz Herzing 4 seconds at the front clear. That is a comfortable margin. But now he'll be looking at lap times. I feel like, Joey, you want to lead at the start of this race into turn number 1, just because you're on the inside. I would not want to be on the outside of the front row.
And it's not necessarily about being on the inside or the outside either. It's about just being in control of the start, being able to get on the jump, being able to extend yourself over the rest of the field. Just getting a 1-car length gap, even a 2-car length gap like Lorenz Herzing had coming into turn 1 this time. That's so critical because you don't have to worry about anybody else. You can have your own braking point. You can just get it slowed down all by your own. And that's why you want to be up front. That's why Herzing is going to be absolutely pushing qualifying style right now.
Apparently, I've just been informed by the great team at Racing Prodigy is out of turn number 1. Almost contact between the 69 and the 33 is going to slightly detach them from Rackmat in 10th. Second Prodigy Pass winner, Lawrence Bertuns on the SK Racing X30 Miami Cup. He's a 737 pilot in the real world.
Oh, well, maybe that's why he was able to get on the app. He's got so much downtime in a commercial plane. He put the autopilot on and he was going wee-wee on the phone.
And to be fair, I mean, if you're traveling around as much as a pilot, that's a great way to stay involved, and that's...
Can't have a sim rig on the plane, unfortunately.
As much as people believe Max Verstappen does, I can refute those allegations and rumors right now. Unfortunately, he does not. But it's the recognition that there are fast racers and there is talent everywhere. That's what Prodigy is all about. Racing Prodigy is trying to find iRacing, Race Room, rFactor. Those are the quote-unquote hardcore simulators where people are mostly driving with wheels and pedals. It doesn't mean that some of the drivers who are racing on street kart don't have the capability to be fast with regular means. It might just mean they're very quick as well if you give them an iPad.
Yeah, and a lot of these drivers, oh dear, that's Pablo Ellen, very slow through turn 1. Ikepek goes for the full-bodied slam, hockey style, through turn 1. He's going to be side by side with it through turn 2. Excellent move there from the 69.
Big sideways moment for Ellen. Surely tires will be even more screaming now. The leaders were talking after semi-final 1 just how much they were having to conserve their tires for these drivers who are battling. Even those small lockups into each of these corners, that just puts a little bit more load into each corner of the car. These are those moments you're trying to avoid. On board with Ikepek now 11th, Rackmat, Kurjan, and then a bit of a gap growing to Simoncic in front. Maybe some drivers starting to struggle on the tires.
And we heard Jan van der Heijden talking about tire wear in his interview a couple of minutes ago. You wouldn't think tire wear would be a problem in such a short race, but It's a high-speed track, it's a hot day, and it's a tire compound that does get shredded a little bit, so now that we're past halfway, you are going to have to start thinking about that tire wear, thinking about maybe saving a little bit, and some of those drivers behind who maybe were saving a little bit, they may be moving their way forward now as the likes of Rackmat and Karajan start to struggle.
At turn 1, it looks so difficult, doesn't it? 98 feet of elevation change around a track that is just, quote, just 2 miles. I think it's going to be a really interesting experience, let alone driving this track. But I can't wait to see the reactions of the drivers, Joey, when they walk this track for the very first time and experience what some of these cliffs will really be like.
Yeah, I just opened up another tab here. I'm on Google seeing some other things that are 98 feet tall. These are some odd numbers. 3 garage doors is 98 feet tall. 3 volleyball courts if you stack them up. The Richmond Castle, for those of you in England, that's that. The world's longest bus is 98 feet tall. And the Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro is 98 feet tall. These guys are falling down those 98 feet.
These drivers are plunging out of that final sector. I think I found the same article that you're on, Joey. I can also say that the half of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, excuse me. I'm thinking about pizza now. I'm very hungry if you can't tell. That's 98 feet tall as well. These drivers are hoping for some redemption to be able to get into the top 10 around the outside for Fletcher, who once again just soaring at the wheel as the track falls away from him. Angraf holds on to the spot. This is for 13th spot. Excuse me, there's a 14th spot now at this point. It's with Wack behind. I worry for some of these drivers that they're running out of time to close up to those on the outskirts of the top 10. We saw plenty of drivers in semi-final 1, Joey, take advantage of mistakes from others. Time's running away.
I almost wonder if this is an effect of all these drivers watching that first semi-final. Maybe they're aware that there were a lot of mistakes, there was a lot of dirtiness, there were a lot of errors, and maybe these guys decided to take a step back, say, maybe it's more important to keep it on the track, maybe I do need to subtract just a little bit from my my pushing equation and just keep it on the track. And everybody's done exactly that. We've seen basically no race-ending errors from anybody in the top 18.
Yeah, and in fact, even second on back, where Marocek still leads, Morguli, Kolochai, Denahan, and Marconi, they split up slightly. They're not fighting like we saw Brandon Hawkin really trying to work on past McGorgy for third. So these drivers may be setting slightly faster lap times. Might be important when it comes to tomorrow's gridding order. That was a little bit loose of a moment for Ellen, trying to just cover the inside of turn number 1. 25-minute race. We'll add a couple more minutes on for tomorrow's race, Joey. But it's not like we're going to be asking too much more from the tires. If you're sliding this much 15 minutes in, 10 minutes from now, I can't imagine how much pain you'll be in.
It'll be very sweaty, it'll be very squelchy. It's not, it's going to be a very, very hot day, whether you're in any climate. You're sweating a lot, just throwing the car around. There's almost no respite. There's almost no actual straight lines. You're just in constant motion. And that's going to test these drivers. Their physical fitness is going to be tested and potentially improved once they end up at Prodigy Week and they get to work with Jim Leo of PitFit. So a little bit of sim racing, a little bit of sweat, that's going to be good for them in the future.
I think what we are going to probably have to do during Prodigy Week is send these drivers for a run around the track.
Oh dear, I'm glad I didn't sign up then.
Yeah, 2 miles with the elevation. I think that's the real killer, the elevation change.
Yeah, whoever survives to the end, they're going to be in good shape. I mean, these guys are all fit in their own right. I think they'd be able to survive that. I'm just glad I'm not one of them.
I make you a promise, Joey. I'll be there, like I mentioned earlier, joining some of the drivers in this Ethereal journey. I will run around the Atlanta Motorsports Park.
Do it.
Even if I then have to spend the next day lying down in my hotel room recovering from the effort.
Well, your legs are like 9 feet long, so it'll only be like 3 steps for you.
Yeah, something like that. But then with the elevation change, I have to bend my legs more because they're so long, you see. So it's more effort like that, more pain on the long levers. You see racing driver excuses? Commentator
98
excuses.
feet of elevation change, that's just one Arjuna.
Oh, can you? That is... We are talking a character out of Roald Dahl books right now.
Big Juna.
Yeah, oh yes, we are definitely indeed. Here we go then though, into the final 10 minutes of this race, where Lorenz Herzing leads by 5 seconds, Dawid Marocek after the initial false flag in the first attempt at semi-final to running comfortably in second. All the excitement still here though, where ninth is where we see Kurjan running for the time being, but with Rackmat, Ikepek, Ellen, Hangraf, and even Fletcher not too far off.
I'm really disappointed in myself, by the way, Arjuna. I said Big Juna. I should have said Larjuna.
Oh no, that was right there, wasn't it?
It was right there. The move is right here for Rackmat on Kurjan. They're going to make some contact on the exit of turn 10. That's Ikepek, rather, trying to get by Rackmat for the final spot in the top 10. Showing his nose, making a little bit of contact, trying to use the old bumper American style, but still not working.
Just a reminder as well that one of the drivers had mentioned in the post-race interview that it's a 30-minute race. 35 minutes is tomorrow's final. It was 30 minutes for Race Room just because the Formula 4 car can only take so much fuel, and we didn't want to force them to come down to pit lane. We are back to our 35-minute scheduled final time for tomorrow. That again, live on Racing Prodigy's YouTube. Check us out, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Down through turn 11 once more we go. Rackmat trying to close up that little bit of a gap that Kurjan's been able to build, and slides the car initially out of the final corner, loses some momentum. Here comes the 69 to try and close.
The tires are starting to turn into jelly. They are going away, they are melting, but you've only got to hang on for 6 more minutes here if you want to hang on to this last spot in the top 10, but things are about to be very difficult. Onto the front straight here, the draft's so effective, and Ikepek peeking to the inside into turn 1. He's not able to be late enough on the brakes though, but he gets it slowed down earlier, and there is the last spot in the top 10 for the driver of the number 69.
And there's the drift as well, a little bit of style points added off the corner. On with the vertical camera that Joey said he wants to try and shame earlier. Rackmat gives us the full setup with the gaming PC, RGB resplendent in the background as well. Out of that middle sector they will funnel. Ikepek has only been racing in sim racing for going on 3 or so years now. Has been slowly taking a little bit more courage to go and rent karts in the real world. Says he was always the fastest at his local kart track. That sounds quite promising.
Whoa! What a drift from Rackmat there. He's not able to get it on the road in time. Ellen gets by, but that was an incredible drift from Rackmat. Those tires are gone, but it looks fantastic. It looks spectacular.
Yeah, clearly you can tell that 20 minutes in, tires have been a contributing factor in a 35-minute race in tomorrow's final. Those at the front will have to make sure they're managing all 4 contact patches underneath them. This all has allowed Ellen, yes, up to 11, but Ikepek has slightly separated himself in that final transfer spot into tomorrow's final, deep under the brakes. I think we're going to see a swap there as Rackmat drops down the field. Hangraf, Fletcher, and Vac all slide on through.
He was struggling so much on the tires, made a little bit of contact into turn 1, and the second that radical started looping around, there was no saving it. There just wasn't enough grip on the tires to save a slide like that anymore. Rackmat was playing with fire, but unfortunately his tires were on fire. And that's going to be the end of his day. Hopefully we'll see him back in a future event.
Again, still 2 more events to come before the first Prodigy week. The PRL SK Racing TKM Continental Cup is currently live with daily qualifiers. It's free to enter on racingprodigy.com. Street Kart Racing is free to download in the App Store. So break out your iOS device, iPad, iOS, iPad or iPhone rather, or maybe one of those brand new iPhone 15s, and enjoy what seems to be a rather thrilling experience. Thousands joined us for the very first PRL Street Kart Racing tournament, and iRacing, of course. The Ovals is going to be interesting to see how that gets on in what's going to be a long day, Joey, on October the 8th.
It's going to be a very long day. Multiple semifinals, multiple finals. Basically what they've done is they've split the world in half. They've turned Iceland into the prime meridian. There's going to be half of the world that's west of Iceland, half of the world that's east of Iceland. They're going to make the semifinals and the finals. And I think that's a good thing to do because, truthfully, sim racing does have a bias towards what we consider the Western world, towards Europe and towards North America, but we want to get all sorts of drivers involved, whether it's from East Asia, even West Asia, Australia, Africa. We don't talk about them in sim racing enough. It's going to give somebody from every part of the world an opportunity.
Yeah, again, Joey did mention it, but we were expecting that we'd have a driver from Namibia in the field today. 19 countries represented in the initial top 40 of the time attack qualifiers for today. And It's truly an international flair that we continue to see in this Prodigy Racing League. Of the 20 drivers we had in our first selection committee, the youngest was 13, the oldest was 46 years old, 3 had racing licenses, 4 didn't have driver's licenses. It's a big, diverse field that we have entered into the competitions, and it goes for the experience in sim racing as well. We've had the top level, the Herzings, the Maroceks, and then we've had drivers that have competed in sim racing for only 3 weeks.
Yeah, even if it doesn't add up to a real-life career in racing, a lot of these drivers have put themselves on the map in terms of sim racing, and they're going to be back for a long time with how impressive they've been. I still remember Henry Moore a couple of tournaments ago on iRacing. He'd only been on iRacing for about 2 months, had accumulated thousands and thousands of iRating in the meantime, and we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of him in the future. We're going to be seeing a lot more David here in the near future as well. He wants this podium. He's close to Merguli, and if these two come together, that's what Ellen and Handgraf are thinking about for their final spots in the top 10, because it looks like they're not going to get it on track.
That was a big push wide out of turn 11, rising up the hill into the final sector. Should be coming up towards what will be 2 laps to go for these drivers. I think Herzing surely is already onto the penultimate lap of the race. 3rd and 4th, the difference between starting on row 3, row 4. Once again, we've seen big gaps up towards the front. I definitely get the feeling, Joey, at least from the form book that's being showcased right now, it'll be between 2 tomorrow, and it won't even be close.
It could be, but then again, I remember back to that same event that same tournament I mentioned a couple of weeks ago on iRacing at Okayama. We had 2 dominant semifinal winners. They ended up coming together and getting into trouble in the final, and it was somebody else who came in through, and it was Kane Halliburton who ended up winning that Prodigy Pass at the end of it all, who didn't win either of the semifinals.
The thing to remember, though, with Okayama as well is we saw the draft play such a strong factor, Joey, but no one was really pushing in the semifinals to try and get to the front. They all just wanted to get to the final. Today, we've seen Herzing as well as Von der Heyde run away and build up a 5+ second lead.
Yeah, but then they've got to fight with each other tomorrow. So it's going to be, is it going to be a clash of the Titans? Is it going to be a case of one of them much faster than the other, like we sort of saw with Marko Pejic in the previous event? We never know, but I'm looking forward to the clash of the Titans tomorrow as Herzing completes his final couple corners.
Well, it's been another dominant display, and the smiles, the recognition that half the job's done. Lorenz Herzing wins semi-final 2 in the Prodigy Racing League rFactor 2 Radical SR3 Cup. And now tomorrow we'll line up on the front row with a trip to the Atlanta Motorsports Park on the line. Marocek grabs 2nd, Merguli will be 3rd. And now the final couple of cars solidify themselves in the top 10. Ikepek will grab the final spot, Joey. A less dramatic 2nd semi-final, but the Atlanta Motorsports Park still entertains.
Great race all the same. Great race from Simoncic up there in 6th. I do have to correct myself. We saw another driver who was kind of in the dark. That wasn't him. So Simoncic did turn his lights on. He was nice to us. He let us see his background. But look at the drifts here for Lorenz Herzing. He is hyped up. He is ready to go to the final tomorrow. And he's testing the limits of this Radical. He's using the downforce for some even bigger drifts that we saw during the race.
Some team managers maybe suggesting that their drivers are going to be gearing up tomorrow for a bit more of a push, but Herzing and Von der Heyde have set the tempo today. 40 whittled down to 20. Tomorrow's final will determine who's heading to Atlanta in 37 days' time. This is the very first Prodigy Racing League tournament on rFactor 2 in association with Motorsports Games, and boy, has it been an interesting semi-finals. And now tomorrow, 35 minutes to settle it all. Lorenz Herzing clear at the front by almost 5 full seconds from Dawid Marocek in the Burst Esports number 76. Martin Merguli dropped a further couple of seconds back in the closing stages, but in a good starting spot, all things considered, in front of David Kolochai, as well as Jake Denahan, who dropped back from the early stages. Jurnej Simoncic only qualified in 9th, but clawed his way forward to 6th to gain a slightly better foothold for tomorrow's finals action. Zoltan Varconi, Stan Vlistra, and then Johan Kurjan and Denny Ikepek. Those are the 10 that will advance on forward, but they unfortunately will not be joined by the likes of Pablo Allen, Steen Handgraf, Sergio Fletcher, Thomas Vac, Fadli Rakhmat, Andre De La Valle, and then Kamto Chukwer and Nicholas Legros, the 18 that took to the green flag in what was a second attempt at semi-final number 2. So Joey and myself will be back with you tomorrow for all the semi-final action, for all the final action with all the semi-finals now in the books. We'll grab a chat with our winner in a few moments' time. But Joey, what are some of the lessons that we've learned from 2 races?
We've learned that you can pass at the Atlanta Motorsports Park. It may be known as a club track. It may be very tight at times and undulating, but you can make moves. You can get aggressive. And it's the aggressive drivers who tended to move their way forward. It was also the very, very fast drivers who ended up dominating in both of these semifinals. And they're going to meet tomorrow. They had nobody to race with today. They're suddenly going to have a very different scenario. A much, much more difficult competitor than they faced in either semifinal today.
Let's see if we can catch up with semi-final 2 winner. Another dominant display at the front. Lorenz Herzing put it on pole, ran away. And Lorenz, talk to us about the Atlanta Motorsports Park. It looks like a lot of fun, and tires seem to be not so much of a challenge for you.
Yeah, it's an awesome track. I've never driven here before the competition, so yeah, it's an awesome track. It's like a roller coaster, and yeah, I just nursed the tires the whole race, and they lasted very, very well, better than in any practice session I did. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with quali and race.
You've experienced the highs and lows of sim racing. Talk to us about what it means to be back here in sim racing with Racing Prodigy on this journey for E2Real. What does it mean to you to get one more chance to go out there and get into a real race car?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, half a year ago, I thought I'd hang my gloves to the wall and leave sim racing because I wanted to focus on getting into flight school. And now I have a time window until the end of November, and I thought I'd just give it a go, back up the sim, and yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Tomorrow's final is going to be 35 minutes long. Both you and Jan van der Heijden dominated in the semifinals. What do you think we're in store for?
Yeah, I saw his race. It was very dominant, and I'm really looking forward to the race tomorrow. I actually did a short practice race with him. We were very close. I think a 25-minute race was like 5/10 in the end, the difference. And yeah, we were both equal on pace, I think. So it's going to be very interesting, yeah.
Looking forward to it tomorrow then, Lorenz. Congratulations on the win, and we'll see you back on track tomorrow.
Thanks.
Always great to catch up with the drivers after a race, and semi-final 2 winners going to be back here tomorrow at the same time, same place to do it all again. Joey, as we wrap things up though, I mean, my goodness, first time here that the Prodigy Racing League's partnered up with Motorsports Games to run a tournament on rFactor 2 semi-final 1. I think might have been one of the most wild semi-finals that we've seen. Semi-final 2 calmed it down just a little bit.
It did, but I can't wait to come back tomorrow, about 23 hours for more of this action. We're going to see the tension level rise, we're going to see the intensity rise, and we're going to see even better racing than the final, than the semifinals. I can guarantee that, because there's so much more on the line. The prizes are suddenly on the line. The Prodigy Pass is on the line. I'm just going to go to sleep for the next 23 hours and wake up the second the final's ready, because I'm excited for nothing else.
We'll be back tomorrow here on Racing Prodigy's YouTube channel, as well as on RaceBot TV for the final of the Prodigy Racing League rFactor 2 Radical SR3 tournament. But for now, for everyone behind the scenes at Racing Prodigy, for everyone supporting us on this E2Real journey, for the team at RaceBot TV, Connery Maddock, Dane Baird, Joey Tebben, and myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us. 35 minutes away from handing out another Prodigy Pass, 37 days away from landing here at the Atlanta Motorsports Park for Prodigy Week.